welcome to today's webinar, How Microservices Are Redefining Modern Application Architecture. Today, we are going to cover a variety of topics. We are going to give a brief introduction to our hosts on the next slide. Then our primary host, Donnie Burkholz, will talk about DevOps study and surveys performed by 451 Research, discuss the concept of pets versus cattle, containers and where they fit in the future of virtualization, fragmentation and how that drives microservices. We'll go into 4 real-world examples. Then we'll switch over to treasure data, looking at the new architecture and new problems that come with it, the emergence of the data lake, API-driven integrations, and finally, analytics as a microservice. We'll look at how Pebble is using that today, and then we will open it up to Q&A. Your hosts today are Donnie Burkholz, who is the Research Director for Development, DevOps, and IT Ops channel at 451 Research. They cover the technologies employed for software development and software lifecycle management to drive business growth. Kyoto is Vice President of Marketing at Treasure Data. A former quantitative analyst and software engineer, he has been a contributor to open source projects like Fluent, D, and Imbulk. With that, Donnie, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here today. So I want to start by talking about some of the drivers behind microservices and some of the things that you need to have before you can successfully make microservices work for you, before we get into what they're all about and some of the real world case studies here. So what we're hearing as we do our research across the industry is that the way people think about IT is changing. It's less and less about just keeping the lights on, although that still is around in spades, and it's more and more becoming about contributing to the business and collaborating with the business. Because of things like shadow IT, the rise of cloud, the rise of open source, the rise of as a service and open APIs, all these are changing the way that people are building and deploying software. And more software is becoming the underlying factor behind people's businesses. So here, what I'm showing you is some data showing that more of these IT shops are thinking about agility, getting to market faster and lowering their risk, versus the ones that are thinking purely about dollars and cents being spent on IT. IT is growing as not just a cost center, but as a collaborator with the rest of the business. And that's what you can see at the top in those blue and orange segments as they grow over time. And so the question is, technology is becoming more important to the business, but what are we doing with technology and how is this all happening? And one of the big questions there is, what does the new stack look like? How do we actually become more agile? What technologies do we choose to do so? And there's a fairly popular journalism blog site that's emerged over the past year or two called The New Stack, talks about Docker and containers and sort of all this new sexy technology that's coming out. But the problem is, there's not really a single new stack anymore. What there is an infinite array of possible stacks. There's no more thing where you can say, hey, we're going to go with the LAMP route, or we're going to go with PHP on IIS or .NET and be done. Technology is more fragmented than it has ever been, whether that's languages, databases on the back end, JavaScript frameworks, take your pick. There's no longer a single right answer. And that creates a lot of problems of how can we keep up with that? How can we pay attention to what's coming out? And how can we work with all these different technologies inside the same organization? Or how can we standardize on one of them? And that's kind of what we're going to get to with how do DevOps work? How can we encapsulate these things using technologies like containers? And how can we deploy them independently and quickly using microservices? And so here's just one more data point I want to show you about how people are feeling a lot of pressure to move faster and faster, to move toward models like continuous delivery, toward models like DevOps style approaches. And this is just a lot of different data points based on roles across the software organization, showing you that almost regardless of role, people feel a lot of pressure to move faster. Some people feel more of this pressure than others, but everybody, when we ask them, are you getting pressure from the line of business to deliver things more quickly in weeks, days, or minutes? They universally tend toward yes, right? Almost 2/3 of them are saying, yeah, we're getting that pressure from the business today. I'm not sure what's going on with the other third, where they're not getting pressure to move faster, but maybe that's the third companies that are going to die, because the Fortune 500 turnover these days is very high. And so that brings us to how are companies able to deliver faster in this increasingly fragmented world? And DevOps is the approach more and more of these companies are moving toward. If you're not familiar with that, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this because I want to really get into the more interesting, more deep stuff. But it's important to have an overview of what DevOps is all about because it is a prerequisite for doing microservices effectively. And the easiest way to think about it, for people who aren't familiar with DevOps as a whole, but who are familiar